All right, let's get started. All right, the study session of November 23rd, 2021 is called to order. Donna, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes, I will. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember Inesco.
Here.
Councilmember Bode.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
Mayor Dorsey.
Here.
And we will not have Councilmember Feast with us this evening.
Okay. So our only study item tonight, this evening, is a noise ordinance. City Manager Jeff Knighton has the details for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, deputy mayors, and members of council. As you've noticed over the last several months, we are making a concerted effort to update some of our ordinances, and we're breaking these apart piece by piece to make sure that we get it right and we do it right the first time. This one tonight is part of the noise ordinance, and the idea behind it is to make sure that we address what's happening today. Our current noise ordinance, I should mention, was originally adopted in 2006. So 15 years needs a little bit, need to look at it, make sure that it's up to date compliance with the current state law, and to address some of the issues that we've encountered in the city regarding noise. So first thing I want to mention, first and foremost, like the vast majority of the ordinances that we're bringing to you, whether it's code enforcement or the animal ordinance that you heard several weeks ago, these are complaint driven. They're not something where officers or code enforcement officers are going to go out and be looking for these types of things, but it's intended as a tool for us to address those issues when we receive a complaint from a member of the public. So what you have here, the copy that we provided with you and was published on our website in advance of tonight's work session was a strike through and underline. So you can kind of see what was in place since 2006 and what we've added. The central theme of all of these efforts is to streamline and make things more simple, make things less wordy, less verbose, and to boil it down to what we're actually trying to get at, so everybody can understand it when they read it. Really what we're looking at is maintaining the hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., which are the more quiet times, but also if noise is received in residential districts, primarily residential districts. Industrial districts isn't something that we're too concerned about or want to pursue. There's a lot of work going on. Many companies run 24 hours. So didn't want to curtail those activities at all, but really wanted to pay attention to the residential districts. So that's what we've written in here. And really what we're doing is making first contact with people that we've received a complaint about, and then just advising them, hey, keep it down. People are trying to sleep. Loud music, house parties, those types of things. Somebody working on their car in the garage at 1 a.m, which I have seen. Those types of things, and relatively simple ordinance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Chief Beeson is here with us, and if you have anything to add, Chief, please go ahead.
Thank you, City Manager Knighton. One thing I want to point out is that if you look at most of these sections, one of the keywords that's in there is repetitive or continuous. So this isn't the person that starts their vehicle that's loud and then they drive off. This is those times where a neighbor is called in to their neighbor and said, hey, you're making a lot of noise. Can you knock it off during these hours? And they basically said, no, we're not going to do it. So very similarly to our homeless ordinance, we would go over and talk to them, say, we've got a complaint from one of your neighbors. Can you please keep it down? A lot of times what we'll find is that people, yeah, I'll turn it down. And then as soon as we leave, they turn it back up. They start causing other problems. And the thing is, the way it's written right now, we can't really do a lot about it. The other circumstance we see a lot of this with is a lot of folks that have motorhomes and they'll leave the generator on and right next to people's houses, making sure that they understand, hey, you know, it makes a lot of noise. It's keeping people up. As soon as we leave, they turn it back on. There have been a couple instances in the time I've been here where people that they don't have any kind of permitting to have live bands, but they're having them and it's much louder with amplified music. So that we would be able to take some kind of action in the event that we go and we talk to folks and they don't immediately comply with that. If we have to continually go back out there and make contact with these folks so that we have some means of being able to resolve these issues for the neighbors who continuously look at us and go, why can't you solve this problem for me? And right now we really can't. So we're hoping that moving forward, and this doesn't happen all that often. It's just making sure that the right tool is in place so that in the event that it does happen, that we as the police department can do something to help people that can't sleep or they have sleeping babies or that it's just too loud, it's disrupting their businesses, whatever the circumstances might be, that we can do something to help them too.
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments for Jeff or Chief? Eric?
I have a question and a request. So the question is, why did we remove the exclusion for parades and other events like fireworks? Our fireworks start around 10 o'clock at night. So I don't want somebody denying an application for fireworks because it's going to be from 10 to 10:20.
Yeah, so as you know, council member, fireworks in the city are prohibited except for those special events.
Well, that's what it says here. We scratched the whole special event out.
Yeah, so we can definitely add that back in. The intent is certainly not to curtail the fireworks for any celebrations
Okay.
or special events permitted by the city.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that's not going to be a denial for a special permit for fireworks because we say you can't have them after 10 and they start at 10 and they go to 10:20, you know, so.
Yeah, no, that's not the intent.
Okay, that was my question. The request is I'd also like to see in here the warning, like we did on the other ones, you know, in writing. You get a warning first, and then the next one's the ticket, and so on.
So in that in the penalty section 918. Okay.
Yeah, 0230, and that was it. Looks good though. Thank you, Chief Beeson, for working on these.
My pleasure.
Kathy?
So I have a little story that just started lately, and in fact, I hear it right now. White Mercedes that's, I don't know who owns it, but it's the apartments behind the Civic Center, a white Mercedes, quite loud. And they come out, the driveway and they rev it and they rev it. And then they go to the intersection and they clear out past the police department. And I can hear that car clear going up Alder Street, basically. That's how loud it is. And they started at, 9:45 or so in the protected time of the loud, you know, they don't wait till 10. So I'm concerned about things like that.
So we have a section in here. It's at the bottom of page 2 of the draft ordinance that the repetitive squealing, screeching, or other sounds from motor vehicle tires in contact with the ground or other roadway surfaces because of rapid acceleration, braking, or excessive speed. I believe that there is also a whack that relates to motor vehicle operation about how loud the mufflers can be, although Chief Beeson can correct me on that one, that we can use to address that type of problem. But if people are peeling out and racing repetitively, this would certainly be able to address that portion of it.
And to add to that, there is actually language on here that says the frequent, repetitive, and continuous sounds of connection with starting, operation, repair, rebuilding, or testing of any motor vehicle, motorcycle, or off-highway, easy for me to say, off-highway vehicle. So someone that's out there that's just running their engine and keeps revving their engine would fit under this definition. But in a lot of cases, if someone hasn't gone out and told them about that, the first thing that we have to do is make them aware that somebody is unhappy with the noise. You know, if they don't know about it, it is not just to write them a citation saying, hey, you're making too much noise. So the first step has to be making sure that they're aware of it and giving them that chance to remedy that situation. And then if it continues after that, then take enforcement action after that. But a lot of times people go, oh, I had no idea that it was bothering my neighbors. And then at least that way we have that tool in the event that it continues after it's been brought to their attention.
Well, I wondered if they don't, they don't hear it or something. They're in their car every night and then they tear off past the police station. And I'm going, doesn't anyone hear? Am I the only one hearing this? And it's pretty loud.
Well, you have to understand, Councilmember McDowell, that as a general rule, police officers' peace cannot be disturbed. So even if we think that it's loud, we cannot be the complainant on that. So
Right.
it has to be generated by someone else that is saying that it's bothering them. And at that point, then officers can go and make contact, make folks aware of that. Because another thing I find a lot of times with especially noise type stuff, most people don't want to get into a confrontation with anyone else. So the first contact people have is when the officer shows up. And many times, the minute they know that they're bothering someone, that's the end of it. But there are times where people are like, hey, I'm going to throw my party, or hey, I paid for this band, and they want to continue beyond that. And this is a tool that we would have so that we can help people that are saying, hey, they're disturbing my peace. Officers in and of themselves cannot have their peace be disturbed.
Should I keep a little notebook of these, of the
No,
time?
Councilmember McDowell, just call us and we'll go over and we will talk to them and we'll make them aware of the situation. And then we will document that we talked to them, who they are at the time that that happened. And then if you call again and say, hey, they're back doing it again, we would have a record of that from the first time that you called.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Bode?
Yes, I am very excited for your clarity of enforcement. It's amazing. I support it. I can't wait to see you guys get more and more teeth. And soon, hopefully, we will find more jail space.
Anyone else?
I believe Councilmember Schmidt has.
Sorry, Joe, I see you now.
All right, I blend in. I guess I'm kind of between Eric and everybody else on this one. The $1,000 fine for the repetitive yada yada, I get it. I kind of would like to see $125 first offense ticket. You've got the scenarios that play out a lot of times. I have had a fair amount of complaints from neighbors about noise complaints, and from an enforcement standpoint, chief, I've witnessed it very, very clearly when cops show up, knock it off. If we have to come back, something's going to happen, right? And as soon as they drive away, the volume cranks back up or the dog starts barking again or whatever. So I'd like to see almost like a lower level first offense type of a ticket. Obviously, what I think that would also do is if it was just simply $1,000, it's going to be pretty hard to swallow, right? For an officer to, write somebody $1,000 fine over a noise ordinance violation. So I would be comfortable with like $125 ticket for making the mistakes in a repetitive fashion. I still believe, a warning is appropriate as well for the people who just honestly had no clue. But from an officer discretion standpoint, they should feel comfortable when they can size up a situation and realize that this particular individual isn't probably going to comply and could be able to cite at a lower level fine for something like that. I don't know if that's doable, but I think to consider that a little bit outside of just the warning or $1,000. So.
Councilmember Schmidt, to play devil's advocate for a moment, though, there are a lot of times where somebody's paid for a band to come to their party at their house, and we come and say, hey, you'll be cited. And they're like, oh, $125. I would rather pay the $125 than give up my van. So, that, and you have to understand that even though we have an ordinance in place, that never takes away the officer's discretion to decide whether or not the citation is the appropriate action to take or not. But I can tell you, I've had plenty of times where people, they're like, oh, you're only gonna charge me $125. Write me the ticket, I'll pay the fine. And then the problem continues. Now, we could write it in there that you do that the first time and then they come back and the next one, if it's going to be that $1,000 fine. But again, this is tying up a lot of police resources on one instance for a pretty significant amount of time. So I can see that both ways, but there have been plenty of times where people are like, oh, it's only $100. Yeah, write me the ticket. I'll pay that fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Councilmember Schmidt, are you comfortable with the warning, the 125, then the 1,000? Is that where we were going?
Yeah, exactly. And again, my rationale with that is there's something in between nothing and $1,000.
Sure.
Because again, and I think that again, starting to send a message that, quality of life is important. And, if you are obviously doing something irresponsible, revving an engine at 1 o'clock in the morning and goofing off, does it warrant $1,000 the first time? Probably not, but it should warrant something probably beyond just a written warning.
Okay.
James? Mr.
Sorry, I don't have my hand up. I got kicked out of the system. I'm pushing buttons and
okay.
messing stuff up. So
Oh.
that was a mistake. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I had just for instance, two things. I had some concrete poured at my house last week and I asked them not to start till 8 o'clock. Just to keep that concrete truck and the pumper truck out of the alley for just a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, I took something to Jeff earlier this year, or, actually about a month ago, I guess. Our crews were down blowing leaves off the Civic Center parking lot. And that's all great and dandy, but I think they started at about 6 or 6:30, was it? And then we had a lady, one of our customers came by and mentioned that she lives down that area somewhere. So I was wondering if for our crews, I know this is only once, they only blow the leaves probably 2-3 times a year. I don't know, but maybe they could start at 8. I don't know. But
yeah, this would definitely apply to our crews too, whether they are blowing leaves or street sweeping or anything else. The only exception would be, of course, in an emergency.
yeah. But
That's a real raise.
go ahead.
It's hard though, because you kind of want to beat traffic sometimes when you're blowing leaves. If you're blowing at 8, you're hitting every car that's on the road and they're trying to not blow it at the cars. So, I mean, it's a tough balance on that one, because if they're out there before the cars are out there, they're not fighting traffic, where at 8 o'clock, you're kind of fighting traffic.
Yeah, that was the rationale that our public works crews were using, was to get it out of the way before people get on the road to go to work. So there is a fine balance there, but I think we can strike that balance when we're in more industrial or commercial areas. We can do it earlier, but if you're right next to houses where people are trying to sleep, probably a good idea to wait a little bit.
Yeah, I see them come down the S curves up there quite often, and they're, I don't care what time you blow those leaves. Yeah, it's just a little thing, I know, but.
So that is a good question, Kevin. What options do we allow for construction? Because there's like a window. I mean, there's a window of time that, and especially in the winter months, even in the summer months on hot days and things like that. I'm recalling this now because neighbor had a roof replacement in the middle of summer, and it was 100 degrees outside, and they were like, hey, can we start a little earlier? And and then you think about like the noise ordinance and things like around that. And if we're gonna special event permit, which apparently we will allow a special event permit to violate other city ordinances, but so if we're going to do that, then why wouldn't we extend the same opportunities for a contractor when they're pulling a permit?
So I think that construction activities, it's pretty standard around the state for construction activities not to start before 7 a.m. And in some places they differentiate between weekdays and weekends. So on weekends, you can't start until 9 a.m. and you're done a lot earlier. You're done about 7. But during the week, it's pretty standard for 7 to 10. And I don't see too many violations of that, except I have seen crews start as early as 5, but I've only seen that when they're building, gigantic warehouses and those types of things where they only have 3 months to get it done. Most of the time, in my experience, starting about 7 a.m. is about as early as they're going to start.
And I wasn't sure if that was even a complaint that we get from the construction industry or not, but I just was curious if we were extending some flexibility on that if we're doing other things.
Yeah, and I think we can, if somebody is doing a subdivision where they're doing a lot of grading and things like that, we could add in a provision in this ordinance that allows for exceptions once neighbors have been communicated with, very similar to the way we do special events. Special events require that too, where you communicate with affected businesses or affected property owners.
Yeah, I could go for that. Hey, Kathy, you got something?
Yeah, so the quinceañeras and the parties they have at the Civic Center, I'm not sure how many they've had lately, but when I worked the casual desk down there, we had one every weekend. And that music, people clear past Safeway could hear that music. And it went till midnight. So is that, how's that going to how are you going to handle that when you have an event here and the party goes till midnight, but they have to stop at 10, their music?
They would have to stop at 10 if the music could be heard. I believe it's in here 50 feet from the property line. So, keep all the doors closed, turn it down, however that's going to work. We have we've had similar instances with our partners at the MTA at the transit center, because they also lease out some of their space for similar events. So we would apply those same restrictions to ourselves as we will to anybody else.
Okay.
All right, anything else? No other questions or discussions for tonight?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just to sum up really quick.
Yep.
So we had written provision for the warning under penalties, an intermediate step, whether that's $125 or something similar to that, then proceed to the $1,000 fine, and then exemptions, a written exemption for special events where approved through the special event process, like fireworks, and a potential exception for construction activities should the general contractor or whoever is working on it come in and request it and receive at least acknowledgement from surrounding property owners.
Sounds right.
Sounds good.
We can do that.
Anything else from you, Chief?
No, that's it for me. You guys all have a happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you before that.
You
You
too.
all, hey, I'd like to say one more.
Quiet.
Did you say quiet?
Keep it quiet. Oh, yeah.
I just want to thank you guys for last week for letting me be gone, because I wasn't in a good place, and If I'd have joined, I think I would have messed everything up. So I thank Deidre for getting it through. So everybody have a good Thanksgiving, and the study session is adjourned at 6:25.